Yeah, I was just thinking, why didn't we do this in person? You're like 15 minutes from me here in Miami.
I know. I feel like if we just set up like a super cool like podcast recording studio in Miami, I mean, we could have the world come here.
That's true. That's a good idea because, Miami is the place to be. So many people are traveling here. We got some great guests, just as like an excuse to come down to Miami. But you're in Florida like me, South Florida. And you're doing some really great work with your company, Young Goose. It's just phenomenal what you've been able to do in the skincare, skin health industry. And we're going to talk a lot about skin health. We're going to talk about, I want to ask you about acne. What causes acne? What about cellulite? What about extra skin after weight loss? And then we'll get into some of the cool things you're doing with your company. Before we get there, I mean, I would love for you to just go back in time a little bit and what transpired that led you into this space of skin health and biohacking, et cetera? What were the steps that got you there?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone you talk about like health in general, health entrepreneurship, somehow it connects to their personal story, some health issues that they had, and that kind of led them down that path. And then probably their entrepreneur nature kind of led them into being an entrepreneur in that area, right? But so I'm not very different in the way where I got out of the military. I was in Israeli special operations. Had some wear and tear on my body, and I got recruited into biotech, into some startups in the health industry, etc. And what I was interested in, because I believe that you can do a much better job doing something you're interested in, was that intersection between wellness and technology. And along my journey, I was an executive in one of the maybe like the first company who ever took what is now red light therapy from the medical field to the consumer side. And I don't know if you can even relate to it now, because it is now so ubiquitous. And so, I mean, like most people have it in their house, or at least in their gym, right? But when we started, it was extremely difficult to have people understand why they should use something like that. Like why would they even waste, in air quotes, their time standing in front of red light? And since this was a medical company kind of transitioning, what our sales language relied a lot on is like end case scenarios. It was like, well, if you lose a limb and you don't want phantom pain, right? It wasn't like something people can relate to. But what people we found out could really relate to is the difference in like their skin health, or athletic performance, or again, like post weight loss, skin laxity, and things like that. And it really spoke to me. I mean, making a difference in people's life where they can kind of have a visual resonance with their health journey, for that matter, was amazing to me. Because I think most things, low carb diets in general might be, and exercise in general. I mean, what I really like to equate it to is working out in the gym and getting a pump in your muscles, because that pump is kind of a gateway to the future. Like, okay, if I do that every day, these are what my muscles are going to be without me pumping them, right? So the same way with red light therapy for the skin or something like that, we can have some relationship between our health journey and the way we look at why we're happy to look in the mirror. And that was kind of the first inception of me wanting to make a difference in how people look, but also from like a wellness standpoint. And when I discovered for myself also NAD, back then it was IVs, and figured out that they were extremely expensive. But I mean, when I discovered them, they were like $1,500 for IV. Oh, wow. A cheap place would be like $750 an IV.
Plus the time spent getting the drip, right? Several hours.
Yeah, I called it like exactly like, golf is an expensive sport, not because it's expensive, maybe also, but it's because it's the middle of the day and you need to spend 4 or 5 hours minimum, right? So the same thing with the vitamin IVs or NAD IVs in general. It's like 4 or 6 hours to sit in a chair in an office, secluded from the world. So we tried to do a transdermal application for it. It didn't work so well because the skin liked it so much. But since we were connected to this idea of wellness, the skin, getting results, etc., it actually really appealed to us, and we made lemonade out of lemons and made the first real NAD, topical NAD boosting product. And the company kind of grew from there. Since we're interested in many different things, we went after many different molecules and processes and not stayed only in one specific niche, if you would, even though most people recommended we would, but we're kind of mad scientists.
What year was that when you made that pivot?
2014 was when we started studying NAD, topical NAD. Specifically, 2015 was when we understood that it cannot go. Well, maybe now we've cracked the code, but in general, that it cannot be absorbed into your bloodstream through your skin. Go transdermally. It kind of gets absorbed in the skin, gets uptaken locally by cells, etc., which makes a lot of sense, because your skin is the organ that, for the most part, unless we have some malady, is really what requires a lot of DNA repair, which relies on NAD. Any kind of anti-aging process relies on NAD, which is like regenerative fuel or cellular fuel. So it makes sense that the skin would hold on to it and use it if it could. And that is what we specialized in, like making it, be able to even be utilized.
So maybe if you could explain a little bit more about, because you mentioned what NAD does in terms of anti-aging and what it does for regeneration and energy production. Maybe you could go a little bit deeper for those who start like at a beginner level. What exactly is NAD, and then why is it important to get this molecule?
Okay, so first of all, so that's a great point, and this is, as funny as it sounds, it's like one of the oldest molecules that we've known about for health in general. Like, it was discovered in 1903, so 120 years ago. The person who got a Nobel Prize for discovering it was like in the 1920s. So it's not a new molecule, but what we thought for the longest time, until like the 2000s or the 90s at least, was that this is mainly a molecule that kind of aids in energy production. And that was kind of the end of it. So a part of like our fueling system for our cells. But what we found out when longevity science kind of evolved is that any repair process, or any especially like cellular repair process, so not necessarily like the macro, but the micro of DNA repair, for example, or different enzymes that are responsible for maintaining our epigenetics and things like that, they really refer to NAD. And it's almost like you would go, you had a Tesla in your garage, and you walked outside like, oh, I need to drive 5 hours. You're looking, you're like, oh, there's 20% in the battery left. I'm not even going to bother. So our repair processes, a lot of the times they're like that. They're kind of snobbish. They're like, oh, if there's not enough NAD, I'm not even going to try. So that is why it is not like our fuel gauge, for that matter, where it's going to basically drive the same until it's empty. It's going to, we need to kind of maintain optimal levels of NAD if we want any repair to happen, for that matter. And as we grow, so when we're 30, we start really declining in NAD levels. We decline even before that, but when we're hitting 30, there's like a sharp downward curve. And by the time we're 60, we have half of what we need, basically, as far as repair. And any type of hallmark of aging, so we kind of know how aging looks like on a cellular level. We know what are the hallmarks of aging, what are the different categories to describe aging. Each one of those categories, you could link it back to NAD. NAD has some type of involvement in that decline in ability.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. I know that David Sinclair was probably one of like the people who made it the most popular with his Sinclair Labs and the importance of it. So a lot of people are now supplementing with NAD. What are the pros and cons of supplementation? What are some red flags to look out for when it comes to taking NAD? And what are some other uses of, what are some other ways to get in NAD?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, because NAD on its own only exists inside your cell. And I think we can talk about a lot of different molecules where we would like to just consume what the body needs, right? Like if we have a wrinkle, we understand that it's deficiency in collagen or breakdown of collagen for that matter. But if I took my collagen powder from my cupboard and just rubbed it on the wrinkle's not going away. The body doesn't really work in that manner where we can give it the end process of something, the end result, and expect it to just understand what we're trying to have it do. Normally, we need to communicate in the body's cascade of responses, kind of plug into one of those processes in the beginning and have the body figure out, oh, yeah, I have more of whatever that is. The end of it would be fill in the blank. And NAD is quite the same. So if we gave the body NAD, the body has to break it down. It doesn't know how to get it into the cell. It doesn't have, the highways, the highways to get it into the cells, the pathways. So what we need to do is basically give the body the building blocks the body creates or recycles, and then it gets it into the cell because it knows how to do that, and then it has more NAD in the cell. Okay. Having said that, actually there is something, I think, a cool anecdote most people don't talk about. But having said that, the problem with just supplementing on NAD precursors, NAD building blocks, is that you have like a hierarchy of also what they meet first, what organ they meet first, and what organ the body prioritizes. And it's not all the time what you would prioritize as an individual. So for example, if I have brain fog, or if I have a sore shoulder and I know I need more repair fuel there, when I supplement on NAD, the first thing that is going to meet NAD is going to be my gut, so it's going to break down a lot of it, and then it's going to be my liver. It's which is the first bus stop in that system, and the liver is going to keep about 95%, or could directly translate about 95% of those building blocks to NAD and keep them. It means that supplementation works, but really what you're getting is a very low amount, and you need to do it every day. And it's more to maintain higher levels of NAD, but it's not going to really be a therapeutic approach, if it makes sense.
It makes sense, but so in that scenario, would there be a benefit to the liver getting all that NAD? Like, are you doing some good things for the liver?
Definitely, definitely, and there is no real the difference between benefit and toxicity is enormous. It's 100-fold. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So if you can afford it, you can take a lot of NAD for that matter. We can talk. There are some modifications of what you would take together with it. Mainly methyl groups, since you're sacrificing methyl groups to break it down or to utilize it. So normally we are doing like a 2-to-1 ratio of NAD precursors, building blocks, to methyl groups. And when I say precursors, we're mainly talking about what David Sinclair is talking about, which is called NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, and NR, which is another professor, Dr. Banner from MIT, which is kind of another pioneer in the field. They are really interchangeable. Whoever recommends one or the other, it's probably because they make money from one or the other. Okay, they're really interchangeable. Yeah. So either one would be good. Normally, it's like if I took a gram of NR, I'm going to take half a gram of trimethylglycine or a methyl group. But going back to our kind of bust stop scenario, the most of it's going to stay in the liver, and what's not going to stay in the liver is going to go to your muscles, it's going to go to your heart, and it's going to go to your brain in that order most of the time. So you're not, if you care about like your skin health or skin anti-aging or anything like that, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to get results there. And also the results that you're going to get are minute. And that is why it's much more beneficial to have NAD precursors, NAD building blocks absorbed directly into the skin and get uptaken by the skin, if that's what you're interested in. And then another problem is that NAD is more like potential energy. Now we have access to youthful information. Okay, we have the ability to repair cells for that matter, and we also have access to better information on how do we repair whatever that is, skin, collagen, whatever. The problem is that your body doesn't know a wrinkle or a sunspot or laxity is a problem. The body does not know. It needs to repair it. Why? Because there's no inflammation kind of associated with it, attached to it. So we do need to use other processes, other, whatever that is, and we can get to it, but other products to signal to the skin that it needs to go back and repair whatever that is. An example I like to give is like a bone that broke and healed in a bad manner. If we want the body to, to correct it, we really need to go back and re-break that bone. So kind of the same thing.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So the benefits of NAD are numerous. Essentially, it's protecting against DNA damage. So it's protecting the telomeres. Is that correct?
Yes, this is so. Really, everything that we're going to be talking about as far as our health goals, we can look at how NAD helps with that, because what NAD really does, aside from being that energy molecule that I talked about, it fuels a series of genes and enzymes that these genes encode. But you can think of those genes, and these genes are responsible for our youthful state. So if we take our DNA, and our DNA is kind of a recipe to whoever we are. As we grow older, this information gets murky. The ability to read this information gets more and more difficult. You can think of a CD and it being scratched. And if you remember, like when it used to get scratched, we used to
my Sony Walkman.
We used to take, like, if you remember, like toothpaste and toothbrush and kind of brush it, and it would help a little bit, right? So that's kind of what NAD does. These enzymes are called sirtuins. There are actually two. There are ones for DNA repair and ones for DNA coherence. These are PARPs and sirtuins, and they rely on NAD. So if there's not enough NAD, they're not going to work. And you can think of sirtuins as the police, and you can think of PARPs as the fire department. So when we have DNA damage, the fire department goes and tries to, stop that damage from happening. And the sirtuins are kind of the one that keep the order, right? Keep everything aligned and everyone behaving well. So as we grow older, we have the information in every cell to what it means to be that cell gets more and more corrupted, and that cell does things that the cell is not supposed to do, and vice versa. It does not do things that the cell is supposed to do. So we really can think of how this is basically aging as in a sentence, right? Any type of aging that we can talk about, if we become allergic to something over time, if we gain weight faster than we would before, if our fat becomes white fat as opposed to brown fat, obviously like collagen production, any kind of end result that we can talk about, but also on a cellular level, it really stems from the inability to access our youthful information. That is what it is, and NAD is at the base of all of that. So it does protect the telomeres, the end of the DNA, from shortening, but because it allows the process of elongating them. But it also, does many other things. About 600 different processes are potentiated with NAD. So when we don't have enough, and all of those 600 processes are vying for the supply of NAD, we have a problem.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and the analogies help us kind of put things together. And you, with your company Young Goose, have solved the challenge of getting NAD as a topical application, and you created some products, and there's some science behind it, which I'm going to get to in a second. But I want to stay on the topic of the skin health, and why skin health is much more than just an aesthetic thing. It's actually showing you a window towards your inner health. So explain what the look of skin does in terms of what's happening on the inside.
Yeah, wow, that's an enormous topic, but we'll start with the fact that studies show that if we just look at a person and we try to gauge how old they are by the way that they look, most of the time we're right. That's actually astounding. Like on average, what we call the intelligence of the masses is off by a couple years. I mean, if you gave 100 people to guess someone's age, biological age for that matter, they're going to be 1 or 2 years off. So first of all, anecdotally, we can see how the skin is a big mirror, no pun intended, to how we are from the inside. But why is that? It's kind of the same thing we talked about before about the body kind of preferring to support, a specific organ and not another. Your skin, when you're in a reproductive age, so you and I, we kind of love to go back and talk about us as creatures evolving and how do we connect it to health, and kind of understanding the root of us as human beings. And this is actually very interesting when we talk about the skin, because as long as we're in reproductive age, as long as we need to spread our seeds around, the skin is an organ that communicates vitality. There are new studies about something called autoluminescence in the skin, and the way that you can infer the health of the person through that. But in general, the skin signals sexual vibrancy and youth. As we grow older, past that point, and we can talk about our gut skin axis, we can talk about how, or brain skin axis, how these highways, if they're not maintained correctly, it's because those organs are not functioning correctly, affect how our skin looks. Obviously, younger age would be acne, older age would be collagen production, etc. But aside from that, if we zoom out a little bit, when we pass the point of our peak sexual point, what happens is the skin becomes more and more a protective organ, more and more an organ that is more like a barrier, more like taking the brunt of our exposure to environmental stressors, whether it is UV when we lived in caves, but now most of it, if we live in a city, it's pollution, it's the EMF, artificial light, blue light. Actually, if you're not completely what we call Fitzpatrick one skin type, which is completely white, blue light can actually contribute to hyperpigmentation. So, I mean, the skin becomes more and more a barrier organ and not a communication organ. And the problem with that, obviously on a superficial level, would be that it grows older and the body maintains it less. But there is actually an adverse or a reverse process that is happening, because the skin kind of sacrifices itself as far as its ability to repair itself, as far as its ability to kind of maintain its interaction with the environment. The skin also contributes to whole body aging. I mentioned before the gut skin axis and the brain skin axis. So the skin is actually one of the organs, alongside the eyes and the ears, an organ that is exposed to the environment and is responsible in relaying signals from the environment back to your brain, back to your body. When our skin becomes old and we accumulate cells that are malfunctioning, especially cells that are called senescent cells, which are cells that are I mentioned the police and the fire department before. So these cells are in jail. Okay, they did not behave well, and now the body says, well, you could become cancerous, you can become dangerous. I'm going to put you in jail. You're in growth arrest. And the problem and they're also called, by the way, zombie cells.
Yeah. They're troublemakers.
They are troublemakers. They infect other cells. They don't contribute to the organism. They only create inflammation, and they actually infect other cells in aging, literally in the disease aging.
Bad influence.
And your skin has the most amount of those senescent cells as you grow older. Obviously, it's the largest organ. It's also, in our modern day society, our skin is not exposed evenly to the sun. So we're not exposed most of the day to the sun, but when we are, it's very specific areas over and over and over again. So we accumulate those senescent cells in very specific areas. These areas then create inflammation, not only in the skin, but they start to create inflammation in the brain as well. Especially in a place called the HPA, which is kind of a little like a computer room, for that matter, for like an operator, like a call center for interaction with the environment and hormones. So it starts to disrupt hormone production in the body, etc. So really, it's a snowball where in the beginning we're aging, we're kind of creating damage in the skin and aging in the skin, and then it comes back to bite us because the skin creates aging and inflammation in the body.
So interesting. All right, we know the importance of the hypothalamus pituitary. It runs the show, controls your thyroid, adrenals, hormones, etc. What is the mechanism between the skin and the hypothalamus pituitary? Like what is that? What's the process? Yeah.
What's the cascade of metabolic events that happens there?
Yeah, exactly. That's the question.
So first of all, as we said, the skin has a innate connection to the HPA, to the hypothalamus pituitary axis, because it is responsible in relaying stressors from the environment, especially like UV and things that require us, by the way, light as well. Like we can talk about, just as an anecdote, you could have a face mask when you're sleeping at night. If there is light in the room, you will not sleep as well because your skin is exposed to this light as well. So our skin has a direct connection to the HPA. What happens in the beginning, as far as senescent cells, as far as these troublemakers, is that let's go back and say senescence is going to happen wherever cellular turnover is required, okay? Because if we don't repair those telomeres, they shorten and shorten the more we split the cell, okay? They kind of sacrifice themselves. And then what happens is when they kind of get too short, that's it, you're done, buddy. You're going to grow the rest. One of the cells that it happens the fastest with are our melanocytes, our pigment-creating cells, our immune cells in the skin as well, and cells that are blood cells in the skin, or the cells around our blood vessels. So all of those things create inflammation. But what happens is that we are starting to get those inflammatory signaling molecules that are called SASP. They are starting to inflame, to send inflammation markers back to the brain, back to the HPA. And that is normally something that is happening when we are, when there is a really big disruption in the body as far as hormonal disruption. It's not something that's supposed to happen if you're healthy and youthful. So we are really getting a disruption in hormone signaling also to our body, but also obviously inflammation in the brain in general contributes to brain fog, impaired decision making, which could then lead to not only, a lot of the time we speak about, specific cascades of metabolic events, right? But really what you and I, as you know, I am fascinated with the concept of decision fatigue and our ability to make good decisions daily, hourly, every minute, etc. And that is, I think, an even more important subject to talk about. When we talk about sleep a lot, we can talk about sleep really dysregulates sugar, like insulin secretion. Yeah, we can talk about whatever you want, but really what sleep does, you're going to make bad decisions. Okay. And that's actually supported by science. So we are not only getting that direct correlation metabolically, but we're also getting a more holistic influence And that is, by the way, Yangus, that's one of our main research and development endeavors, are clearing those senescent cells, creating autophagy, creating reawakening senescent cells, as far as you can kind of dial them back with, as we've learned in recent years, they don't have to be killed off, but either or, we're trying to do either or.
I love it. Dr. Pompa calls these senescent cells government workers that have been at their position for too long and now they're corrupt. That's
amazing. But the good news are, as opposed to normally corrupt people, is that you can trust them again.
Yes.
And going back to Pompa, Pompa is one of the, I think he's one of the oracles of the mTOR pathway. Actually, we had a conversation about it, and the way that you can interact with those cells, for the most part, is through the mTOR pathway. I mean, if you
spurt of it.
Yes, exactly. Actually, no. It needs to. You kind of need to modulate it on and off and on and off, and that is a way to also
like pulsate. Yeah, so like
pulsate,
mTOR autophagy, right? So we want to get a good balance there. That's where the magic actually happens. To your point, it's like get enough autophagy, get enough mTOR, don't get too much of either, because that's not good.
Yeah.
Which is really different than what most people talk about, especially like in the keto and fasting space. They're really all about, on carnivore, really all about like autophagy, and they kind of forget the other side. But then we have the bodybuilding side and fitness side that's all about mTOR, and they forget the autophagy. So you're saying the balance is important.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as we know, the larger the human, the less autophagy, isolated autophagy. Sorry, not the human. The larger the animal, the larger the organism, the less autophagy works in isolation, as far as longevity. I mean, it's C. elegans. It's extremely easy to increase their lifespan with fasting or calorie restriction. Yeah. But the larger that organism you're working with, the less you can see those results. And a lot of it is because we're not only programmed to survive, we're also programmed to be dominant within our environment. And you have to balance those two, because we're not designed for one or the other. We're designed to be dominant, and then to have someone more dominant come along, and we need to kind of preserve ourselves and go back to, this, whatever it is, went away. Okay, that's our time to be dominant again, and on and on.
Yeah, and it makes total sense. And if you just think about the average person, they're in a mTOR, they're stuck in mTOR, they're stuck in growth. They need more of the opposite, right? But then people in our space are typically doing too much fasting. So either way, you got to balance it out. So on the topic of skin health, what are some things we should pay attention to to see visually that somebody's skin, somebody's health is just not as optimal as what they would like? Should we pay attention to? You mentioned acne in the earlier years. What about like hyperpigmentation, like these brown spots or dark circles? Like, what are some of the things that we should pay attention to with our skin?
Okay, that's great. And since you talk a lot about healthy metabolism, there are so many things that we can talk about, but we can talk about like healthy metabolism and what we should notice in the skin. And first and foremost, I think it's less to your healthy and health conscious audience, but maybe if they want to pass it on. First is skin tags.
Yeah.
So skin tags are basically, so when I mentioned mTOR, so when we are in extremely anabolic state all the time, so we're in growth state all the time, these are basically kind of offshoots of that constant growth state. So that's something, if someone has skin tags, aside from they're headed to type 2 diabetes, but aside from that, in general, it's a kind of a sign that we're too much in mTOR, and probably you should go to see a doctor. But
if you have skin tags, go get a fasting insulin. It's probably going to show that you're insulin resistant. Usually it's synonymous with that.
Yeah, or a CRP test. Right. So that's number one. Number two, you did mention like dark circles, or so basically. The eyes in general are fascinating because the skin is thinner, so we can. Yeah. It's almost like our kind of little laboratory to see what's going on or what's going to happen in the rest of our skin, sooner. And we're not going to talk about like if the person's like 15-year-old and they have dark circles. That's like not a different issue, but that is pointing to a much starker problem, bigger problem. You should probably check like liver function, kidney function, etc. But we're talking about adults. So, and the reason I'm also excited to talk about it, because there's, again, a direct correlation to metabolism, because what it means, one of the biggest factors in skin appearance is something called glycation, or AGEs, which are advanced glycation end products. So glycation is, to make a long story short, are a reaction that we get from consuming sugar. So these sugar molecules get attached to proteins, and
they're very sticky.
Yeah, and they disrupt the function of those proteins and in the skin, and also break them out, etc. So in the skin, what happens is that our skin becomes more rigid. It becomes so that rigidity is, we kind of accumulate wrinkles through that rigidity. So collagen is not, a wrinkle is not necessarily like loss of collagen, it's the movement of collagen. So you can think of it like a tectonic movement of plates that creates mountains and whatever. So that is, that's a way to look at wrinkles. It's the inability of the skin to repair the movement of collagen. Okay.
Got it.
And the more the skin is rigid, it's like a dry rubber, right? That you've played around with. You're creating movement that cannot kind of come back, or it happens in wood as well. So that is number one. The more rigid the skin, the more wrinkles we're going to see, and we can see kind of skin rigidity if you know what the pinch test is. When we pinch our skin here, or we can pinch our skin, in the face, or we can just like smile really hard and then let go. The slower the skin kind of bounces back into place, that's part of rigidity. So the more rigid the skin is, the more glycation or AGEs have wreaked havoc on the skin. And our eyes, since the skin there is thinner, the ratio of AGEs to skin cells or proteins is slightly higher. That's number one. What it does as well, the skin becomes thinner, and it loses its structure. So not only that the skin is thinner and we can see dark circles because we can see the blood underneath, that puffiness is the caving of the structure. There's always pressure behind our eye sockets, behind our orbital bones, but the caving of that structure is what we look at as far as glycation, and that is kind of how we create puffiness, or how puffiness is being created, etc. So
when you say caving, you mean like the hollow eyes?
That could happen, but even even puffiness itself, that is that structure not being able to hold the pressure behind it.
Interesting. You know what's fascinating, Amitai? When I was 5 or 6 years ago, I was living in a house here in Miami that had nasty black mold, and I had all these dark circles, and my eyes were caved in because of the mold. Fascinating, huh?
Yeah. Mold and mercury toxicity and toxins in general.
I had that too.
Yeah,
I had mercury toxicity at the same time, so it was both. Yeah,
are huge players in skin health. I mean, first of all, one of the best things that someone can do to their health is go through something like the push catch system of like Quicksilver Scientific, or any type of like mercury detoxification, something like that. That's going to improve the skin dramatically. Why is that? It's because we are always playing the balance between kind of beneficial signals in the skin and static noise. And inflammation in general is a relayer of information. Our body communicates through inflammation, but when there is chronic inflammation or too much inflammation, that positive signals, those get dampened down because there's so much static noise around, and also you're kind of burdening the system because there's always that static noise that signals that something's wrong but the system cannot handle it, so it kind of shuts down little by little. So as far as like our skin and mold toxicity, mercury, things like that, most of the repair processes are not going to be able to function well because there is no, positive communication between damage and repair.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah. So, okay, that's interesting. And what about cellulite and what about loose skin after weight loss? Is there a way to tighten that?
Yeah. So they're very, very, very different since cellulite is more fascial, which you can work on. Fascia, I think, is fascinating. Is definitely not my expertise. But what my expertise is to tell you to go see other professionals. So to go to somewhere that breaks down those fascial rigidity and can smooth out cellulite, that exists. As far as loose skin after pregnancy or after weight loss in general, we need to. There is a point of no return, as we say. So a lot of the structures in the body, if we have gained too much weight, they're irreversible. One famous one is between kind of your belly button and reproductive area, especially if you're a woman. If you gained too much weight, that structure is now compromised. It has changed, and that is where surgery has to happen. I mean, there is no. I mean, that's already irreversible. But the good news are, we can treat that skin after surgery very well. If that's not the case, if it's just loose skin, there are things that can definitely tighten that skin. But I do remind you that we should have a healthy relationship with inflammation for that to happen, right? Because that loose skin does not have a way to communicate, hey, I'm loose, tighten me. So first of all, we have to have something like microneedling or some kind of inflammation or stress associated in order to have that happen. Intermittent fasting in general is a great when we are losing weight. Obviously, there is this famous record of the guy that fasted for months and months.
A year, 382 days.
Yeah, I want to say a year, but I didn't want to botch it. So Sitchin Panda had a research. The guy fasted a year, and he had almost little to no loose skin, and that's something that obviously don't fast for a year if you're not under supervision, but or in general. But that's something replicable.
So you're referring to Sachin Panda. The gentleman that I'm talking about was from the 70s, and he's the Guinness World Record. So I think we're thinking about somebody different. But this gentleman also did not have loose skin from doing a long fast.
Amazing. So as you can see, it's replicable, and that is something that definitely contributes to skin being tighter while we're losing weight. Okay. Also because reduction of inflammation and that modulation of the mTOR pathway and everything that we spoke about until now. So everything kind of goes back to what we're talking about. But if we talk about we have loose skin, that's already a given. So what do we do? So things like micro needling, rolling a dermal roller on the skin, red and near infrared light. So like the one I have behind me now. So most people think that red and near infrared is some kind of I don't even know what most people think, but it's normally being thought of as something that lowers inflammation and is kind of more therapeutic and maybe for pain or something like that. But the main thing that it does really is it releases oxidative stress from the mitochondria and causes low-level inflammation. That's why you can do too much of it.
Yeah, like the sun, same thing.
Yeah, the sun is obviously we have UV, so that's a big issue in the sun, which we would be meeting much sooner. It's very difficult to separate it in the sun. Even if you've only exposed yourself to sunset and sunrise, you won't reach that limit. But if we have a very strong panel of red and infrared light, we can. So standing 10-20 minutes every day, making sure we expose the skin that we want to tighten, that would be extremely beneficial. we do want to make sure that we kind of nurse the fat that we do have back into health, have more brown fat rather than white adipose tissue, and that we can do through cold exposure. We can go into hyperbaric chambers. Obviously, we need about 2. The science shows that we can get results around 2 atmospheres. So as far as the science shows, hard shell hyperbaric chambers are beneficial, and there's less science around soft shell hyperbaric chambers that only reach like 1.3 atmospheres. So keep that in mind. Exosomes, which are kind of derivatives of stem cells, seem to help. And of course, even if we go ahead and do any kind of like skin reduction surgery, we still need to have like the best performing skin prior to this surgery. So even if, a person feels like they're going to have to do a surgery, you need to understand that you were probably deprived of nutrients through your weight loss journey. And that would express itself in every organ, in every cell. So your cells need to kind of perform at the highest level they can for you to have like very successful results from surgery. And that's something I think in general, when people go through a dietary change, and a lot of people, unless they went through Keto Kamp, their ability to mind the P's and Q's, mind the little aspects of nutrition is limited. Also, if you kind of were a little bit like saving on money as far as like going through a program or being supported by a professional, it probably means that you didn't do, your blood work every couple of months, every 3 months, which means that you don't know your baseline as far as like nutrients that your body is holding on to, which is another issue. So you need to understand your skin's not performing optimally, probably because of that, and that led to that extra skin or stretch marks in general or anything like that. Since I mentioned stretch marks, red light is amazing for that as well. Also topical like hydration. You could do crazy things like a lot of people use our hyperbaric mask, which is like a crazy mask that increases cellular energy on stretch marks, but it helps. But also, again, if we talk about like a low budget version, we can apply Vaseline on that, or just pure cocoa butter. That would help as well. But all of that only will help if the stretch marks are still circulating blood. You can think of them as a tear in the collagen matrix. But if they're white, it's already basically a scar. So again, you could fade out that scar. It's a completely different process. But all of those processes what we're talking about until now were repair supporting processes. So they won't work if the stretch mark is white and not pink or red.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a fantastic list of things to do if you have extra loose skin, cellulite, stretch marks. And then you could also throw on top of that, build some muscle, right? Because that'll just help things look a little bit more firm. So if it's like an area in your arm, build some muscle. Of course, if it's in your stomach, it's a different story. So that is terrific. I have a personal question before I want to get into your awesome products. The last few weeks, I've been getting a couple of pimples, and I'm not a teenager, but I've been getting like a couple pimples on my forehead, on my cheek here, which is not common. And the only thing that's changed with me is I did a carnivore for January, and I felt amazing. Like all my scores improved on my Oura Ring, but I did have more dairy. So I don't know if it was that, but what are your thoughts on me getting some acne at this point in my life?
I think it's, again, like I really like how we can kind of zoom out a little bit and explain it through that, and then zoom back in, and we'll see how everything ties together. So the reason I'm saying it is because a lot of people, if they do any kind of like keto or carnivore diet, off the bat, they should and they want to lose weight because of that, they should probably lay off dairy, because dairy has a conversion to IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor 1, which, aside from everything else, we mentioned bodybuilders, they consume a lot of precursors to IGF-1 or something like that, because IGF-1 turns your body anabolic, so it wants to build, and that is part of why if you consume dairy, even if it's raw dairy, by the way, you are
Paul, are you listening, Paul?
Yeah. Even if it's Paul, I don't know, but Paul is now deep into cleaning a car after he
raw dairy. This is an inside joke. We call it the $1,100 protein shake.
Exactly. Yeah. So even if it's raw dairy, you are consuming sugar molecules within that things that would upregulate IGF-1, and that would cause acne, because it also feeds P. acne bacteria, which is the bacteria that causes acne. So what you're seeing is not necessarily acne; it is the inflammation associated with acne, and what it is associated with is a bacteria that's called P. acne bacteria. One of the other things that you could do is use a product. If you're within that process, it's part of what you're doing. You're going to consume more dairy. Like, that's a statement. What you could do is help your skin shed off skin. So we're competing with that bacteria kind of accumulating and not letting our skin kind of shed. So if we're applying topical or supplementing on CoQ10 and PQQ, or any kind of mitochondrial support ingredient, that's going to help us kind of off balance it, aside from obviously taking good probiotics, etc. I like a product from a person that we talked about before from Microbiome Labs. They have a product called Serene Skin, which is a specific probiotic for skin health, and it's amazing for people who know that there is a connection between their acne and some digestive changes. So highly recommend it, really. Even if it's for just skin health in general, I highly recommend that specifically. Aside from, if someone needed another supplement, it would be Qualia Skin. They can. So I take both of them, and both of them are extremely important for skin health.
That's good. Okay, yeah. So I do think it was the dairy. Yeah. So what about sheep and goat dairy? Same issue?
Yeah, because it's not necessarily related to casein, which is more predominant in A1 casein in cow, but more about that sugar molecules that are within dairy.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's, speaking of your products, is there something that you have that I could use for my acne?
Yeah. So we did talk about, the inflammation associated with the acne, right? Because we need to do two things. We need to eliminate the P. acne bacteria, but it's already there. It already created inflammation, etc. So for that, we can use our green tea phyto serum, which we've designed actually to improve red light therapy, but it is also extremely anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial.
I haven't tried that one yet. Okay, I see it here.
Yeah, and we did mention shedding off dead skin. So one of the things that people take normally, obviously I'm against it, but people take for acne is vitamin A. What you would know it as is Accutane. So that is like a crazy form of vitamin A which I'm very much against. But retinol, which we use bioretinol, which is very close to your body's innate production of retinol or vitamin A, is extremely important to help the body release dead skin. That is part of the reason we get, by the way, acne when we're stressed, is the inability to drive toxins out of the skin, because we have less lymphatic movement, but also because we are accumulating layers of dead skin. So if you're stressed, if you are underslept, and if you have some lymphatic problems, all of that, we actually really want to use retinol. Normally it's going to make you red, irritated, or flaky. That's why our retinol is bound to biomimetic lipids that are normally comprising your skin barrier. And together they're working magically. So it's as strong as prescription, but without any drawbacks like peeling, irritation, things like that.
So that's the bioretinol wrinkle and skin toning correcting serum. Okay,
Correct.
got it. Interesting. Stress and the acne connection. Yeah, I did have January was also like a really busy month for me, and there was a lot of stress. So I think that could have contributed to as well. Okay, so I'm adding both of these to my cart. You also mentioned the NAD product. You actually have two of them. We spoke about the benefits of NAD. So why is yours different than other products out there?
First of all, because first of all, I love the fact that we started a movement. So after us, we've any company under the sun tried to back engineer us from big to small, but it's kind of if mimicry is the best form of flattery or whatever. So in general, as I said, NAD cannot. First of all, it's enormous. The molecule, it won't penetrate your pore. It's larger than a pore. So if you remember 10 years ago or 20 years ago, people talked about like collagen in creams, and it kind of died off. Why is that? It's because it's too big. It's not going to get into the pore. So that's number one. Number two, even if it did, the body doesn't, or your skin doesn't have connexins. It doesn't have, highways to transport NAD into the cell from outside of the cell. So how do we solve that? We first of all break down NAD to its core components. We talked about NR and NMN. There's another one called myristoyl nicotinate, which is like something specifically that relates to the skin, but we nanosize them and we wrap them in a lipid layer so they would be stable, because all of those precursors, part of the reason they're so effective in the body is because they're not stable. The body has a very easy time, managing them and breaking them down and using them. So they're very reactive. So we have to have a kind of a gift wrap to get it into the body. First of all, they have to be small, but then they have to be wrapped in a gift wrap that the body only opens. It's like a letter. Only open me when whatever. So that's what we're doing. Right. So we can kind of code where we want it to go, and that is why that's why it's special. But then, as I said, we understand that NAD alone is only potential, and as we know, some people, it's not only potential in life; it's mainly hard work, right? So the way that we do that is by adding things like resveratrol, which we didn't even talk about. Why, resveratrol is normally toxic for the skin, but we ferment it and we make it so it is not. And then that kind of capitalizes on that extra NAD that we have. That is, if we talked about those genes and the everything like longevity processes. So if NAD is their fuel, resveratrol is their gas pedal. So we can kind of accelerate those processes. We have a very special type of vitamin C there. I don't know if most people know L-ascorbic acid, which is a type of vitamin C, but actually this is a synthetic version of vitamin C that's not very good for the body. It increases iron in the body as well.
It's copper. Yep, not good.
Not good. So we use calcium ascorbate, which is like the best form, and we use another one that is much stronger in our senolytic product. It's called ProCare. It's a serum, because 3% of what we're using is the equivalent of like 24% of L-ascorbic acid vitamin C. So we use, a very effective types of vitamin C. That is
what. So just to pause you real quick. The vitamin C, is that the BioC peptide spray? Is that
no?
The
so,
you're referring to? Okay.
So what I'm referring to. So we have vitamin C in 3 products. We have it in our NAD, in our NAD cream. It's called Care, which is really, you can think of it as like a longevity supplement for the skin. Everyone should be using it. If you want to use one product, probably should be this one. And it has it's basically like the kitchen sink of longevity molecules for the skin. It has something specifically for telomeres. If anyone knows like a company called TA65, they use astragalus extract. We use astragalus extract. So that is kind of that product, Care, which is a moisturizer.
And that stands for, Care is great. It stands for Cellular Anti-Aging Repair and Energy.
Yeah. So but we do have, and we have the BioC peptide spray, which is like it's a toner as well. But it really, what we did was we looked at, do you know there's these thermal water, people pay like $10-20 to have aerosolized water. They buy it at like CVS, have aerosolized water that they can spray on their face, but it's just water. So what we did is we said, okay, people walk around, let's give them some benefits when they spray something on their face. So this has peptides, and it has water-soluble form of vitamin C that is like a little bit of sun protection. It's like, it's like a 3 or 4, SPF 3 or 4. So it gives you some little bit sun protection, but really what it does, if you're working in front of the computer, it protects you from the blue light from the screen. So this is called MAP. It's a water-soluble vitamin C. I didn't even mention that, but it's not very strong. What I did mention is a product called, we talked about senescent cells before. So, and I told you that one of our biggest projects is kind of clearing those senescent cells from the skin. And that's what's going to create dramatic results over time. Like if you wanted to take a 3-year before and after, that's going to be the product that's going to give you the most bang for your buck. And that is called ProCare Senolytic Serum. And it has only 4 active ingredients, as opposed to most of our products that have like, a laundry list of them. But they're at very high concentration. So we have THD, which is basically a precursor to the vitamin C that the body uses. Normally, it's what exists in nature as far as fat-soluble vitamin C, but it is crazy potent. So 3% of it is like what people know as vitamin C. It's like 24% of any other, like of L-ascorbic acid, normal vitamin C.
Wow.
Yeah. But we also have there lilac culture, cell culture, that is very similar in structure to what metformin is, which is a diabetes drug that's also a longevity molecule. And we talked about our mitochondria. So this is a kind of workout for the mitochondria. It doesn't only increases mitochondrial function, it also actually increases the amount of mitochondria per cell. And last but not least, we have 2 plant-based extracts there that mimic rapamycin. They're rapalogs. They are senolytic. They clear senescent cells. And this is the only product in the world that has in vivo evidence, so in human evidence, that it clears senescent cells in the skin. And as a small company, let me tell you, it depleted our R&D budget for a while to prove that. So we are very passionate about it. But this is called ProCare. I know it sounds like care. They don't have the same things inside. We just really want people to use them together. So this serum is incredible. We talked about acne before. Because it improves skin performance so much, even though it doesn't have like direct connection to acne, it is one of the things that are going to resolve acne, especially like hormonal acne or late onset acne, in the most dramatic fashion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I just love like the science behind these products. This is not your normal company right here. Seriously. I mean, the products are incredible. I'm looking at the website now. I mean, I've been using a few of them. I'm going to add the hyperbaric mask to my cart, the green tea phyto serum. And you mentioned that putting the green tea serum on before red light, actually you get bigger bang for your buck.
Yeah. And this is, I think it could be its own podcast, but really what happens is that, to make a long story short, as I said, the mitochondria kind of releases reactive oxygen species, oxidative stress, when we're interacting with red light therapy. So in and on its own, that movement is very positive, and that also happens, by the way, when we're going carnivore, which is very interesting. But the accumulation of that type of oxidative stress is the ticking clock to how much time we can react, or the potency of reaction to the red light therapy. So we don't want to eliminate the movement, but we want to eliminate these oxidative stress molecules after they have been expelled from the mitochondria, if it makes sense. Not only to experience a longer to be able to be exposed for a longer period of time and get results. Also, the amount of results can be improved. So we have at least twofold, some research shows tenfold improvement in skin-specific benefits if we use green tea 2 to 5 minutes before. But if we were to go even like crazier, as we know, we have a movement of skin tissue and fascia in any place in our body, and a lot of structures in the body rely on structured water in order to glide. So basically, we have like coating, two types of coating: a coating that is supposed to be sticky with that type of water, and a coating that's supposed to be gliding, smooth. And as we grow older, both of them mix up. Especially like elastin, which is something similar to collagen. It's supposed to be gliding, becomes sticky, etc. And the combination of red light therapy and that EGCG, which is the component that we like in that, which we have 98% of it in that green tea phytoserum, they can reverse that and reset it back into its youthful state. So there is more than just saying, oh, it does this or that. There is like really deep science there. And what I want to say, in each one of our products, what we are trying to do as well, and that's something that we rarely talk about. We're probably going to start talking about it in a few years when we feel people are ready for it. We are trying to resolve stress and trauma that's being held in the skin.
Wow.
Yeah. So we do
trapped
it through
emotions in the skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't really talk about it a lot because I think most people, it could be too emotionally triggering for them or not interesting. That's it. Yeah. That's just me. And I don't think most people are ready for it. I think we should be like a big company that everyone's convinced that what we're doing is like, crazy and helpful, and then we can start talking about it. But I just want to say that this is a big part of who we are as a company.
I love it. And, some of Bruce Lipton's work, Dr. Bruce Lipton's work shows that these trapped emotions get stuck in your cells, right? Even skin cells. So to your point, we want to address it. Fasting is a way to do that with autophagy, and I'm sure you are actually, because your products are actually helping with autophagy. So there's some component there, but yeah, I love that idea because a lot of people have these trapped emotions.
A lot of people are waiting on getting stem cell injections or things like that because of them worrying that there is some component that they're receiving from that person that they got the stem cells from. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I had stem cells twice, so I'm definitely not one of them. But I'm just saying that I think that field is going to grow, and we'll just have to wait and see.
So for those listening and for those watching on YouTube, if you want to check out Young Goose and all the products, we didn't even cover all of them. They have a great website with all their products. Amitai hooked you all up with a coupon code, and that coupon code is Keto Kamp at checkout. Kamp is spelled with the K. You'll get 5% off your entire order. So we're going to drop a link for you in the notes. If you're on YouTube, it's in the video notes below. If you're on the podcast, it's in the notes. We'll put it right at the top with the coupon code. You also have a great podcast I was recently on. We had a great conversation about metabolic flexibility called the Biohacking Beauty podcast. And of course, your company is Young Goose. You and your lovely wife run it. You lecture, and your wife lectures all over the place. Anywhere else they should go to check you out?
I think Instagram is where we try to be the most informative because it's so flexible as a platform. So young_goose_skincare. And that's mainly it. Podcast and Instagram are our two major ones.
Awesome. We'll put that down below. Are you going to be speaking at Keto Kamp this year?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking at Keto Kamp and Health 100, which is also in Texas. And after that, sometimes in the summer. But for the next few months, those are the two.
Awesome. I'll be at Keto Kamp too. For those who want to join us, ketokamp.org. We do have a code for $50 off. It's Keto Kamp, same code for your Keto Kamp ticket. Last question, gratitude. I got to finish every episode with vitamin G. What are you grateful for today?
First of all, I'm grateful for the beautiful shirt you had the other day when you were talking about it.
Oh, the vitamin G shirt? Yeah, I'm going to get you one. What's your t-shirt size? I'll get you one.
Large?
You got it. I'll get you one.
Amazing. So I'm grateful for that I found a way to support myself through contributing to others' self-love and self-esteem. I'm a very selfish person, and I understand that the only way that I can enjoy life is if people around me are enjoying their lives and not suffering. So to me, the more I contribute to others, the better I'm going to do, quite literally. So I'm very grateful to have found a way to do it in my line of work.
Amen. Yeah. And you are doing it, bro. I'm excited for what's to come. You're always innovating and creating new things.